Yeah, no. Begin our meeting.
I think that's a good idea.
Start the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Maureen, could we have roll call, please?
Mrs. Medina? Here. Mrs. Royal?
Here.
Mr. Krings?
Here.
Mrs. Hatch?
Here.
Mr. Davis? Here. Mr. Bembo?
Here.
Mrs. Lee?
Here.
Thank you, Maureen. Next, we'll have the student reps report. Ursa?
There is a choir concert tonight at 7:30. Also, the fall sports are coming to an end. Some are in playoffs and some are completely finished. We have our last football game on Thursday. And then we have the fall ACT next weekend. And lastly, we have the student council going to the ODC and helping out at the ODC during their lunches.
Awesome. How was homecoming?
Good.
Good. School year going well so far?
Yeah.
I hear you need to go, so
Yeah.
feel free.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doing task. Along with, as far as to kind of go on with the student rep and part of the information that we get, a member of the public had mentioned something about athletics and how we should cut the budget and get rid of athletics and that type of thing. But I just like to remind how hard people work for athletics and for the public that most of the athletics are not funded by the school, but they're funded by booster clubs. I got a fundraiser from the Point Red Panthers, which is a Point Rapids Girls Hockey Association, and they were talking about the donation and how they basically have to meet their annual goal of $35,000 a year to keep their season, to fund their season and keep their team going. So they had a nice fundraiser with a letter, and then each hockey player gave a handwritten note, which is kind of a little more personal than a lot of them. But as far as our booster clubs provide a lot of resources to our kids, and the part of the education experience is the clubs, the co-curriculars, the sports, the athletics, and everything else that goes along with after-school activities. So just a reminder to everybody in the public that the booster clubs do fund for uniforms. I mean, our soccer club for the last 3 years, the booster club solely provided for uniforms. Football the same way, wrestling the same way, basketball the same way. All of the uniforms, none of them come from school district dollars. They all come from booster club funding, along with bus upgrades, hotel stays at overnight tournaments and that type of thing. So the fundraisers that they have are important, but another big fundraiser for a lot of them and a lot of things you can spend money and help the booster club is at concession stands. So if you are at an activity where there is a concession stand, partake in it, buy some food from them, because you are supporting the programs for your youth in our school district.
Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing more from the student rep from Carissa as things go. Our sporting events and our co-curricular clubs compete and are involved.
Because I mean, doesn't music and band do booster clubs for football and basketball, or concessions for football and basketball? Another thing that we are fortunate is that we host 2 state events. So I know our gymnastics group and then our basketball and a couple other athletic, or just about all of our athletic groups that state cross country meet make some money one way or the other for their activities to fund their uniforms and everything else.
For what the district spends, we get a real bang for our buck. I mean, it is solely on the back of the boosters. We've all been there. Sold a lot of candy bars and popcorn. So.
Yeah. PTCs, everything else. T-shirts. Starts from the young.
Okay, thanks for the report, John. Next, we move on to the minutes.
Okay, I would make a motion that we approve the regular Board of Education meeting minutes of September 8th, 2014.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the regular Board of Education meeting minutes of September 8th, 2014. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Do we have any comments tonight, Maureen, from citizens? Okay, we'll move on to our committee reports. John, would you like to start us with business services?
Certainly, thank you, John. Our meeting started on October 6th at 6 p.m. and there was no public comment. We only had one consent agenda item, which was a 66.03.01 inter-district agreement with Stevens Point. I believe it was for 4 students. Let me double check. 4 students, yeah, 4K and 5K for virtual. So nobody wants that held out or anything held out, which is that. I'd make a motion to approve our 66031 cooperative agreement for students attending the virtual program from Stevens Point School District.
I second it.
Okay, motion is second to approve BS1, which is the cooperative 66.03.01 cooperative agreement for students attending our virtual program from Stevens Point School District. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, the balance of our meeting was updates and reports. We had an update on purchases for Honeywell, which is our provider for services for all of our HVAC and computer systems that run our HVAC system. Then we also had a report from Dan, which he's going to be adding into our receipts report that we get every month. Basically, financial summary reports covering the cash and investment balances along with revenue and expense expenditures. So we'll have those reports included with our monthly bills packet. Then we also had a report on buying some of them things for 3 of our buildings. They're the Honeywell, they're Epson Powerlight projectors for Vesper, Washington, and Meade. The equipment we had there is about 8 years old. The other thing that Phil told us is that a bulb to replace there is like $70, where the ones from our previous one equipment, which you can't even get parts for, if you can get them fixed, you can't get parts for them anyhow, but the bulbs replaced at $299. So just in a replacement bulb alone, we're going to be saving a ton of money. And with that, I submit the rest of the balance of minutes for approval.
Second.
A motion is second to approve the meeting minutes from Business Service Committee of October 6, 2014. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, John. Next, we can move on to Personnel Services. Sandy?
Personnel Services met last Monday at 6 p.m. And from that meeting, we have 3 consent agenda items, and they are as follows. Number 1, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 17 support staff appointments. Second, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 1 support staff resignation. And third, the committee recommends and I move to approve the proposed language change regarding the 125 flexible spending plan found under the deferred compensation section of the employee handbook for all employee groups. And basically what that's saying is because of the Affordable Care Act, it restricts eligibility for medical reimbursements to those employees who are eligible for employer-provided health insurance coverage. In order for an employer's group health insurance plans to be ACA compliant, employees who are not eligible to enroll in the employer's health plan can no longer be offered the medical reimbursement FSA. It's not, it's there. We're made to do it. So that's what that is. Is there anything that somebody would like held out?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve PS 1, 2, and 3. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And with that, I move that the minutes be approved as printed.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second to approve the meeting minutes of Personnel Services Committee of October 6, 2014. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Sandy. Next, we'll have the Educational Service Committee. Ann?
Okay, the Educational Services Committee also met on October 6th, and there was no public comment. We had 1 consent agenda item, which was about Board Policy 343.4, Course Options Program, and Board Policy 343.4, Rule, Procedures for Handling Course Applications through Course Options Program. Kathy Stebbins-Hintz, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, introduced Ron Rasmussen, who's the principal at Lincoln High School, and Maureen Hodgson, the secretary to the superintendent. Ron and Maureen were available to answer questions and offer further explanation regarding course options. Most questions were concerning the differences between course options and youth options. Maureen pointed out that home-based students now can attend another district for 2 courses where they weren't able to do that before. And it was further noted that with this change, a number of other WRPS board policies related to topics such as part-time open enrollment and transfer of credit will need to be reviewed. These related policies will be brought forward for board consideration in the coming months. So the committee recommends, and I move to approve Board Policy 343.4, Course Options Program, and Board Policy 343.4, Rule Procedures for Handling Course Applications through Course Options Program for the first reading.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve ES1, which is approval of Board Policy 343.3, Course Options Program, and Board Policy 343.4, Rule Procedures for Handling Course Applications through Course Options Program for the first reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And then we went on to updates. Our first update was about school and district report cards for 2013-14. Kathy reviewed our Wisconsin school and district report card results. Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools exceeded the state results on student achievement, closing the achievement gap, graduation rate, and attendance rate. WRPS was rated as exceeds expectations and had the highest score in the Wisconsin Valley Conference and Wood County. I thanked all WRPS staff for their perseverance in achieving these scores. Then we went on to ACT results for the 2014 school year. And Ron Rasmussen reviewed Wisconsin and WRPS's ACT scores. Wisconsin's average composite ACT score was 22.2, making Wisconsin the second in the nation on the ACT assessment. WRPS ranks slightly below Wisconsin's average with a composite score of 22.1. All Wisconsin public school juniors will take the ACT assessment this school year. We went on to Next Generation Technology Assessment from the spring of 2014, and Phil Beckelhop, Director of Technology, reviewed WRPS's 8th grade student results from the Next Generation Technology Assessment. Although the proficient and advanced percentage dropped compared to last year, students demonstrated profound improvements in the standards of research and information fluency and critical thinking and problem solving. Standards that continue to need improvement are in the areas of digital citizenship and technology operations and concepts. Larry Davis mentioned that with the increasing poverty and free and reduced families in the district, this likely affects scores. Then we went on to Renaissance Learning Guidelines. With the implementation of response to intervention in the 2013-14 school year, the use of Renaissance learning products has expanded to more grade levels. In an effort to ensure the Renaissance products that are being used as screeners and interventions are being administered with fidelity as required by response to intervention, both the Math CII and the Language Arts CII developed guidelines for Renaissance learning products. These guidelines will also become a part of the updated RTI guidebook for WRPS. We went on to the Council for Instructional Improvement, or CII, parent representatives, and this year there are 2 parent openings on the CII committee. 8 parents requested applications to serve. These 8 parents were mailed an application to be completed and returned no later than Friday, October 2nd, 2014. Kathy Stebbins-Hintz and I will meet to review the applications and bring a recommendation to the board meeting on Monday, October 13th. Charter school reports was our next item from Think Academy and Meade Elementary Charter School. Think Academy Principal Tina Wallner, as well as staff members from Think, were present to highlight happenings at the academy. It was noted that staff participated in several professional development opportunities during the summer. Staff continued to offer book studies, workshops, parent workshops, and other trainings. Work continues on building an outdoor classroom, as well as a butterfly garden and a monarch way station that will be attached to the current garden. Staff hope to apply for a parent grant to pay for a culvert and sidewalk between Rudolph's Little Deer's Child Care and the Academy. The Mead Elementary Charter School Principal Margie Dorhorst shared updates at Mead. Mead has been recognized 5 times as the Schools of Recognition by the Wisconsin DPI. The Wisconsin School and District Report Card for Mead had a score of 71, met expectations, with the strongest area in closing the achievement gap. Enrollment is at the highest since 6th grade students were moved to the middle school at 441. This year there are 139 new students to the school, 19 in grade 2 alone. The school's number 1 goal this year is addressing behavior. One thing being done to address this is teachers eating lunch with students. There's already been a very noticeable change in behavior. A private counseling service will be at Mead 1 day a week to work with students, and Woodlands Church is helping needy families with payment. We moved on to Schools of Recognition, and Kathy Stebbins-Hintz reported that Howe Elementary School, Mead Elementary Charter School, and Grove Elementary School were identified as Schools of Recognition by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. Each school was recognized because of their high free and reduced lunch rate in combination with their outstanding performance on school report card indicators. Because Howe School has been a school of recognition for over 7 consecutive years, they were eligible to apply and receive the Spotlight School Grant for 2013-14 and 2014-15. Matt Renwick will be present at the November Educational Services meeting to update the committee on the status of Howe's Spotlight School Grant. And with that, the committee recommends, and I move adoption of the balance of the Educational Services Committee minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to approve the Educational Service Committee meeting minutes of October 6, 2014. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. Next, we'll move on to agenda referrals or information requests. Do you have anything? All right. Let's move on to legislative agenda. What do you have tonight?
Well, pretty much the only thing that's in the agenda was the election, the governor's race. There was a debate on Friday, last Friday. I don't know if any of you watched it, but and then there will be another one next Friday. They also, at our Region 5 meeting, fall meeting, they passed out questions that we could ask our legislators that are running for office. So if anybody wants to look at them, I mean, they're pretty much what we've been asking them all along. There really isn't anything new. They also did give us a sheet on how the 2 candidates differ in their positions, and I think that's pretty obvious too, that we've seen it. I know when I watched the debate, it was like watching the commercials. I really didn't learn anything new. It was pretty much stated as the commercials, I thought. So I think it's just to, stay tuned and be sure that you vote. And the voter ID, I'm an election worker, and I went to a meeting on last Wednesday night because I'm a chief inspector and I have to be in charge of one of them at Howe, and the whole thing was about voter ID, and I thought, oh my gosh, I went home and a couple of us talked and said, do you think that'll be? Oh yeah, it's not gonna change, and it did, so stay tuned. The only other thing I did notice that they are going to.
They can't change it again.
I don't know, I wouldn't say never.
The Supreme Court stated.
There is going to be a special hearing on student achievement of the SAGE program on Wednesday, October 22nd. It doesn't give me any information about what it's about, but there is going to be a hearing, so I guess we'll stay tuned for that too.
Can I add? I attended the breakfast that's put on by the Heart of Wisconsin from the Wisconsin Taxpayer Association, and this group is a nonpartisan group, and basically it's not funded by anybody in the state, but they, of course, they gave you a pledge card if you wanted to donate. But basically they said is exactly what Mary said. What you hear in the ads is so distorted. Basically they said don't believe a word they say. Because what they're doing is they'll take a 1-month segment of jobs, and if it's good, they'll use it as good. If it's bad, they use it as bad. So they're not taking that, and basically he showed over the past 5 years, Wisconsin's jobs went up with the nation. If the nation went up, Wisconsin was up. Nation goes down, Wisconsin goes up. Nobody can create jobs any more different than anybody else, but the bottom line is like you said, it's very hard to believe anything they say as far as regards to anything, as far as structural deficit, what it means, who's taking what number, and the spin on it. So he said, it's kind of like buyer beware.
Well, we all have a chance to voice our opinion at the
Exactly.
polls.
That's right.
So,
Wisconsin Public Television has a website that is understandably not partisan, and you can get accurate information from there. So encourage people to use it.
John and Sandy is speaking of asking our legislatures things. Sandy and I talked to Amy Sue Verwink this weekend, and she just wanted to share how much she appreciates being invited to our meetings and how that is really how she is in part in touch with her constituents. And so she thanks us for having her.
it's nice to hear. We've been having discussions about when we're going to have the next consortium meeting with the legislators here, and we've decided to wait till after the first of the year, till after the election, and things settle down, and, give us a chance to maybe talk with the other districts, and it'd be nice. It was a good opportunity to have their ear and in a room. It's not just our district, it's all the districts that we can get. So hopefully it'll be well attended and well received. So.
Can I ask one question in regards to the consortium, or is there any talk about a consortium meeting?
That's what we were just talking about.
Sometime after the first of the year, we thought that
Oh,
we'd invite the legislators.
Oh, I thought you meant to our school board. But there isn't we don't have a consortium meeting on the books right now, do we?
No.
That I'm aware of. I think the next
Okay.
one was going to be with legislators, and we were just
Okay.
trying to come up with a date. I believe we're hosting it too. So.
Yes, we thought we'd host it, and maybe after the election and they're in office a little bit, get
Okay.
get settled and then invite them.
We didn't really want to do it before the election where it turns into a candidates forum.
Up rows.
Okay, thanks everyone. Next we can move on to bills.
Okay, I would make a motion that the receipts be noted and the bills be paid as printed.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to approve bills and payments. Can we please have a roll call now?
Mrs. Head?
Yes.
Mr. Bengel?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Rayle?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Medina?
Yes.
Mr. Crane?
Yes. It was nice to see no hidden elevator fees or anything else. Okay, we move on to new business. The first item, possible action on employee appointments, resignations, and retirement requests. Do we have anything, Ryan?
No, we don't have any.
All right. Discussion and possible action to approve a memorandum of understanding between AFSCME 1075 and the Board of Education concerning the recognition clause, and to also approve the collective bargaining agreement for that group.
In the process of finalizing the tentative agreement that the district had with AFSCME Local 1075, an additional detail came up related to the recognition clause, and that's specifically what the memorandum of understanding is about. There's a small subgroup within this union, this Local 1075, that has been made up of just 4 employees. They are the computer technicians within the district, and they expressed an interest in being removed or disassociating from the union. That is something that for that group of 4 individuals had contacted me about, and they also had discussions regarding that with their AFSCME Council 40 staff representative. The union representative was agreeable to that separation, and so what we're bringing forward, and the representative had also asked that we write up this memorandum of understanding to have separate documentation from the recognition clause in the CBA, outline an agreement between the district and the Local 1075 to remove those 4 individuals. So that's specifically what the memorandum of understanding is about. The second piece of this agenda item that I guess I'd like to speak to next then is in the process of reviewing this and the tentative agreement that we had as a whole with our legal counsel. There's a couple of details that I wanted to share with the board that we were recommended to follow by our attorney. And that relates to the negotiations process and the collective bargaining agreement that we have annually with our union groups, and currently the district is down to just two groups, and at least two that have been in the past that have petitioned to recertify, and that would be our teachers group, and then the group that we're speaking of here, the custodial group, Local 1075. Even in the current format under Act 10, we still enter into a collective bargaining agreement with those groups that are unionized. Unlike the days of old when we had a lengthy collective bargaining agreement document that, could be 40, 50, 60 pages long, in the current model, we're down to just a single page collective bargaining agreement, but we are expected to have one nonetheless. That collective bargaining agreement is down now just to 4 simple articles. Article 1 within that CBA is the recognition clause, which identifies which employees are in that representative union. The second article of that CBA outlines the length, and it's a 1-year collective bargaining agreement. So it outlines July, in the case of the one we have here, July 1 of 2014 to June 30th of 2015. Article 3 outlines the negotiable increase. In the case of the custodial group, Local 1075, we did come to an agreement of a CPI increase of a 1.46% increase on their base wages. And then the fourth and final article is just simply a statement that, in short, says both parties agree to follow law when it comes to the details of this collective bargaining agreement and the negotiations process. Coming back to Article 1, the recognition clause, in this situation, in these circumstances, if both parties would agree to removing a subgroup like the 4 employees we're talking about, it could be written into that recognition clause, could be written such that those individuals are specifically stated and referenced as being excluded from this representative group. So the collective bargaining agreement that we are bringing forward for recommendation of approval does exclude those 4 employees from this union moving forward with this agreement if you do approve it. Now, the final detail that I'd like to speak to the board regarding that our attorney has recommended is that for our union groups, after we've completed the negotiations process, he has indicated that we should draft up a collective bargaining agreement every year that does include the 4 articles that I spoke to, and that we go through, rather than simply asking for approval on a negotiated increase or the board imposing an increase, that we should have the board approve a collective bargaining agreement, which will have written into it per Article 3 what that increase is. Even in circumstances where we impose, we should bring this collective bargaining agreement forward to you with that amount written into it and ask for your approval specifically of the collective bargaining agreement as presented in a meeting like this.
Can I ask a question, Brian?
Sure.
Okay, so now those 4 individuals aren't in the union group, but they still would be eligible for the raise, correct?
Well, by not being in the union, they'd be an unrepresented employee, similar to other non-represented employees that we have now. They would be subject to an increase if the board would provide one. We would simply go through a process annually of providing an offer. It just would simply not be, they would not have a right to a negotiations process by being non-union.
But are you wondering if they're eligible for the increase that this group just got?
The intent, at least what I've explained to them, is that we would still be moving forward this year with that 1.46 with the 4 of them. If you, as a board, wanted to specify that this evening, you could, but the intent was for them to still receive that as an increase for this year. But in future years, after they've come out of the group, they would be treated similar to our confidential secretaries that our school nurses, our psychologists, who are subgroups that are not in a union.
Can they form their own union? Can they form their own union?
These 4 employees, any employee group could petition to form a union.
you just gotta do the guidelines of a year and everything else, but I guess my question then would be, then with the teachers group, we know that there are not all teachers are in that teachers union, but yet when we negotiate, all of the teachers get it.
Correct.
Right,
So why would?
because they are represented.
Yeah, well,
And that comes back
They are-
to the recognition clause, whether they choose to participate or not and pay union dues or not, as long as there is a union with a CBA that recognizes them as being a part of it, they're still in that group for negotiations and increase purposes.
so then why wouldn't these four be still in that group if they were in that group?
They chose, did they choose unanimously?
Yes.
Okay, they chose unanimously to leave the group, so
Oh.
I guess you'd have to ask them.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, from the perspective is, you know, we can't ask if they're in a union or not. I mean, by law, we can't ask that. So if they weren't paying the dues, would it be the same? Oh, I guess it doesn't matter.
But, you know, under the current circumstances, based on the recognition clause, they are by definition in the group. This action, if you would approve it, would exclude them moving forward from being in that group. They would be on their own, in essence. The fact of the matter, for any employee that is not in a represented group, they're at the discretion of the board regarding an increase if they are offered one. Any non-union employee is strictly at the discretion of the board for a pay increase, with no right to a negotiations process.
Are you looking for a motion to approve this then?
So the administration would recommend that you approve both the memorandum of understanding for the change of the recognition clause and the collective bargaining agreement as presented with those individuals excluded for the fiscal year 14-15 and a base wage increase of 1.46%.
All right, then I'd make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding for the 4 computer technicians, as stated by Ryan, as well as the collective bargaining agreement with the 4 points of recognition, or of
1.46.
4 articles.
4 articles for approval and the 1.46 CPI increase.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and a second to approve the memorandum of understanding between AFSCME 1075 and the board concerning the recognition clause, removing the 4 computer techs from that group. Also the 4 articles of the contract. Is that how
The
we're?
collective bargaining agreement.
The collective bargaining agreement, yeah. As well as a 1.46% increase. It's the CPI. Can we have a roll call on that, please, Maureen?
Mr. Bembo?
Yes.
Mrs. Medina?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Hess?
Yes.
Mrs. Rayo?
Yes.
Mr. Krings?
Yes. Thank you, Maureen. Thanks, Ryan.
John, I have then the collective bargaining agreement document that has been signed by Local 1075. I'm going to present to you. There is a place for you as president, Dr. Dickman as a superintendent, and Ms. Het as chair of the personnel committee to sign.
Take that now or when the meeting's over? Okay. Thanks, Ryan. Next, we have discussion and possible action to approve the 15-16 and 16-17 academic calendars.
Okay, if you would take a look at the pink version first. We are operating on a similar calendar day that we've had. In other words, we've had a waiver from the state, though we don't need the waiver any longer because the number of days is no longer at hand. But we would like to maintain the 4 professional days that we've had with staff because we have found those to be quite valuable in disseminating information as needed. If you take a look at the 2015-16, it's the one on pink.
Okay, fine, man. Thanks.
If you take a look at it, and I'm going to share it with you. You'll notice in
my
August,
colors.
the 25th through the 27th would be the 3 days that the teachers normally come back. And then the kids would start on the 1st of September, which is a Tuesday. There would be a 4-day week there, and then followed by a 4-day week since Labor Day is in there. There's a professional development on the 28th. Now, when we do that in September, we try to avoid homecoming week because we want the kids to have the full experience. And we think that homecoming is going to be the week of the 14th or 21st. So we do have to take some of those things into account. In October, we have the autumn break at the end of the month on the 30th, and then a PD day on the 2nd. It's not unusual for us to have a PD day in November, and in meeting with Kathy and discussing, we thought we'd try it on a Monday. And it also then provides kind of a 4-day weekend for kids. Then we have Thanksgiving, and there's winter break in December. In January, there's a record-keeping day backed up with a professional development day. You might think that, the high school's on trimester, how does this look different? Ron is already working within this calendar to make it work for his staff. I think they would use, I don't know, Kathy, were they going to use a PD day or a record-keeping day a little differently? And then we would accommodate accordingly. So the trimester would not be a problem with this. It'll be different a little bit, but it shouldn't cause an issue. In February, we have the month of February, and generally they'll have Spirit Week or something to break that month up. They'll do that within the school systems, typically at the secondary level. In March, we have PD on Friday the 4th. That is state gymnastics, and so that's allowing the kids to be out and working the event and also out and competing if they are. Since we host it, it also gives some flexibility to our staff. There's a spring break in there. In April then, that's wide open. In May, there's another wide open month with Memorial Day. The students are there the 1st and 2nd of June, and the teachers have record keeping on the 3rd. Of course, 2 snow days are built in. If we were to have a 3rd or a 4th, then of course the students would extend into June, the 3rd, the 6th, however we needed to do that.
So does the spring break coordinate with Easter? Is that what that is?
That one does, yes. So let me just go through the yellow one then with you, and then we'll go back and see if you have questions. Larry, do you want to have a yellow one? He does, okay. Well, he's writing on
share
this
with
one.
me.
Here you go. Here.
He's writing on that one, so maybe he wants his
I had it.
notes. So there's a yellow.
Thanks.
Okay. Worse next week. So that in August, again, it's a very similar calendar, but there is a question left out here. So in August, again, the teacher's return date, the students come back after the teachers are there for 3 days. They come back right away for 2 days, the 1st and 2nd. Again, in September, then there's a 4-day week when we have Labor Day, and we have a PD day right away on the 16th. We anticipate that homecoming will probably be one of those second to the last weeks of September. Bill Vickert wasn't able to tell me that for certain, but we're hoping that we're guessing correctly since school has really just begun. We don't think homecoming would be that early. In October, you'll see AB, autumn break with a question mark, and I'll come back to that. We have a PD day in November on the 7th, Thanksgiving, winter break, and then in January, record-keeping day and another PD day. February is open. March, that spring break does not coincide with Easter. Part of our concern is if we put it in that second week of April, that happens to be when junior high athletics get started, and then we're always behind in the conference. It also happens to be a time where there is testing taking place. The ACT is the 1st and 3rd week in March. They specifically pick dates, and they could not give us dates for this year yet. But this year in March, there's an ACT date. This year in March, there's one date the 1st week and one date the makeup is the 3rd week. So we tried to avoid what we think might be the 1st and 3rd week in March with a spring break. And originally we had it during that week of Good Friday, but again, there's smarter balance testing in April, and we don't know exactly where that's going to fall, so that compounded with junior high athletics was a bit of a concern. You'll see GF, that's Good Friday, there's a question mark. Students have often been off on that day, so I'll come back to that question mark. May, that's Memorial Day. In June, you'll see the students come after Memorial Day, the 30th and 31st of May, the 1st of June, and then there's a record-keeping day and a question mark. So 3 days with question marks. Autumn break in October, April has Good Friday, and June has record-keeping day. We need one more day in the calendar for students to attend. When I put this calendar together initially, I had spring break coinciding with Easter, simply because a lot of families travel and that gives them that time. When I brought this through the Quality Educator Committee, which is made up of a group of teachers, and they meet with Kathy and Ryan, I'm not sure who else. I sat in on the meeting, but I don't remember who else is in there. There's teaching staff.
Tina Wallner and teaching staff.
Okay, so a couple of other administrators. I had them look at the calendars, and they felt pretty good about the way they were. Then I met with the administrative team, and that's where they pointed out that junior high athletic piece during that Easter week, and they also, since then, we talked about Smarter Balanced. So I don't know how that might conflict. So therein lies the question, one of the questions I have for you, and that is autumn break, Good Friday, or record-keeping day, the students should attend. I will tell you that I talked with a member of the QEC just to bounce it off of her. I consider her a leader, and she said her inkling would be to have the kids attend the 2nd of June and have record-keeping day on the Monday.
I know.
So that they maintain an autumn break and they maintain Good Friday, both of those days off. And then students attend on the 2nd and we have record keeping on Monday. From a teaching perspective, if you're a teacher in the classroom, I think that autumn break is pretty important. I think it's nice for the kids to have a break, and it's nice for the teachers to, they're just getting to know the kids, getting things up and running, and to take a breath and get caught up with whatever they need to. And then Good Friday, if that's attached with Easter, that gives people a 3-day holiday weekend to travel. I mean, that would be my recommendation for that calendar. Now, the second question then I have for you, and I will turn it over to any of you at the table if you have anything you want to interject. But the other question I would have is, I did talk with Nakusa. They don't have theirs finalized. I did talk with Port Edwards. Hers are very similar. Our large breaks are the same, the lengthy ones. However, she has a few PD days here and there that maybe aren't, and I don't think either of them have brought their calendars through their board. I did meet with Joan Bond, and she and Brian Betts had come together and had conversation, and so they're working on their calendars as well. They won't all be identical. I think the larger breaks will be in common, but there will be, for example, I know the parochial schools sometimes have days that they just have no control over. The diocese decides what those are, and they don't know what they are when we're setting calendars 2 years out. So therein lie some differences. There was a question, though, is the board interested in trying to start early? In other words, prior to September 1. And, that's for discussion. I mean, the law states that we can't start before September 1. And
Last time we discussed it, we thought that there wasn't much of a chance that we would.
And I wouldn't disagree with that, but I could work, if this was a strong sentiment of the board, I certainly could sit down with the parochial schools and work through that, and I think we'd have to apply together. Because I believe they are very interested in starting sooner, and they may well start sooner, and they have in years past started sooner than we have, and they've had.
How does that affect the busing?
Well, it's costly. Often they will have parents drive the students on those days in order to mitigate some of that cost for us. So I don't know that, I don't know exactly what Joan's calendar will look like, or Brian's, but.
Well, if there is a chance that it's approved, I guess is one thing, but if it's not, it's wasting your time. I mean, when we've applied in the past, we thought that there was a good chance it was going through and it got shut down. And if that's the way it's going to be, why waste your time?
And I don't know. And again, I don't know what parents would prefer either, and I think you'd probably get a 50-50 mix. But I also know that we have football games going on before the school year
I
even
was gonna
starts.
say, I would think if we could, the majority of the people I talk to, once football starts, they think we should be in school. So I mean,
But they have football players. There may
well,
be
not all of
parents.
them in football. I mean, even if there's a whole raft of athletics, every sport in the fall starts before school starts. Everyone, golf, soccer, volleyball, tennis, cross country, football, I said football, they all start before school starts. Every
Well,
one
they're
of them.
practicing certainly, and many of them have competitions.
Oh, yeah,
prior
I
to-
mean,
Yes.
we've always had competitions in soccer before school starts since Joe's been involved, so.
So I throw that out there. I mean, if it's something you want to think about, or if you want to make a decision tonight, that's certainly your prerogative. This isn't urgent that it has to be decided tonight, but I did want to bring it to you tonight because
Well, I
I
think we can-
anticipate that we'll have parents, starting to call and wonder, what about the next 2
I would
years?
say, my question, or I was gonna bring forward that we should go to school on the second and have record keeping the following Monday.
Right.
And I think we can approve these, and if we can get that waiver and can start early, I don't think anybody would have a problem if we readjusted the calendars.
And speaking as a
Okay.
mill worker, we start putting in for our vacations in December for vacation season that starts in May of
Which is-
2015. So
which
if
is
I've got
kind
a
of why I'd
calendar in
like to
front of
get
me,
this
it's very
done.
nice to say, I know when spring break is.
Yep.
That I
How
can
did they determine when homecoming is?
Pardon me?
How did they determine when homecoming is?
First home game?
So I'll give you an answer and then we'll ask Ryan. I believe Bill Vercoy works with the people that we play, and they set up their schedules, and then whatever, however it makes sense, depending on where they're playing, it's sometime usually in September. This year it's very late.
That's what I was wondering. 'cause you
And they
kept
don't
saying
like it this late
September.
typically, yeah. But
It's driven
Is
by
that-
what your home schedule is going to be
Yeah.
first and foremost. There's also a balance on field availability as we schedule with Assumption in their use of the field, and then trying to find what makes sense. I mean, we've had years where we have 3 road games in a row at the end of September, and so you either have to choose the second week of school, which is pretty early,
Yeah.
or you go real late. Traditionally, the high school is tried to target the end of September, the last Friday in September or the first Friday in October. But if you don't have a home game in there, it really starts to create some problems and needing to move it around.
I think that's what happened this year, is we had 2 home games early, and then 2 away games, and then the home game was in the first part of October.
So Colleen, if we decided to try for the waiver to start school before the first, how long would that take? I mean, if we did that, how far back would it set us getting the calendar
Or
approved?
how soon can you apply? Because
Right.
this is for 16, 17.
Well, it's 15, 16, and 16, 17, and I anticipate that we'd have to check into it immediately if you decided that that was something you wanted me to pursue and look
If
into.
we did the waiver, would it be for 15, 16 also?
I think that's what we would be applying for.
And then does it carry over, once you get it?
I don't know. I haven't spent a lot of time looking into it. I did review, that the district had applied for one some years ago prior to me being here, and that was not approved because it was not enough of a cost to the district.
Do we know if any districts have been approved?
I don't know of any that have, and
Who's in charge of the approval? Who?
DPI.
Just,
None have been
There's
approved.
like a
I think.
committee there or
We're
something,
not going
or-
to get one.
is there a committee or is it like
At
one
DPI.
person?
Yeah, I don't know.
Most districts that are approved, it's because they have things like building referendum projects going on, and they're either trying to get a quick start, or it's going to affect them in the spring, and they want to get out earlier in the spring to start the construction process. That's most who get it.
They might be more amiable towards it this time because Labor Day is so late. We're in school before Labor Day on both calendars. So that might,
Why the law was
Right, 'cause that's
passed to
what
begin
drove
with is beyond me.
Once again, my goal was to try and end us, end with the kids. The only concern I have about that 16, 17 is if the kids are attending on Friday and we have snow days to make up, then we're bringing them back on Monday. So I try to do it so that there's a reasonable, what makes sense endpoint, taking various other things into account. But yeah, perhaps. I mean, what I could do is if you want to approve the calendars tonight with the understanding that students will attend on the record-keeping day is what I'm hearing, or on the 2nd, and then teachers will report on the 5th. And then if, you direct me then to go forward and just do some investigating, and I could bring that back to you, if I could start the process at least and take a look at it. I think it has to involve parochial schools, though. I mean, Joan and I were talking about it, and certainly they would be interested in starting earlier, and they may well start earlier than ours.
Start
Because they
checking out
can.
the bus numbers.
Colleen, on the 16, 17,
Yep.
the PD day in September, that's the third Friday. We don't want kids gone. Isn't that the third Friday?
Well, yes, it is.
Not a good day.
I think we'll have to move that.
I just thought we may want to have a few bodies.
Good catch.
Very good.
Wow.
That would be a hard number to turn in, wouldn't it?
Zero.
Well, but I wonder what, if a school isn't in session on that day, I wonder if they use, Maureen, do you have an idea? Do you know? Do they use the
Just guess
Thursday
at
then?
it.
You have to advise the EPI of your reason for that.
Okay.
You can select another
Move-
date, but you have to.
move
do
PD.
it.
Well, we all looked at this calendar, and
Never know.
that's why you're sitting right over there, Ann.
I just thought that was awfully early. What-
Yep.
We couldn't do that PD day in the beginning of October?
Well, generally, we've, in the past, tried to do one in September, just because there are often so many new initiatives, and we want to catch them early and get them rolling. And the first 3 days that they're back, there are building meetings, there are departmental
Yeah.
meetings, and so PD isn't probably,
Yeah, I just don't remember one that early. I thought they were always in October, but I
well,
got
knowing
one
that,
thing right, don't we?
knowing that homecoming might instead be,
Well, could you move it tentative to whatever week is not homecoming? I mean, at least then you have an idea, it's either gonna be the 23rd or the 30th.
And
And
that I
if the
don't-
homecoming is, once we know the date for homecoming, we could establish it.
what would it be to do like a Monday, October 3rd?
I was thinking that same thing, but what if homecoming would be on the 7th and 8th? I mean, could that be homecoming week? I mean, I could
Except
find
we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Fridays in
Yeah.
by that
Do you
time.
think we could, I think the 3rd would be great. The reason we've been going earlier is it really is helpful for the staff to be able to have the opportunity to work with them early on.
I understand that. I just,
Well, another option would be to put it during the week of the 12th, on that Monday. But that's,
That's real early.
yeah, and that seems, I want to get the students in and going.
that would
Can't
be
we
your
do like what
first
John
Monday.
said about, do it like a tentatively whenever the homecoming is not?
I mean, if homecoming week is the 19th, then you would have the 30th. If homecoming week is the 30th, then you'd have the 23rd.
And it's 2 years out. I mean, Bill knows now what
Yeah.
next year's is.
Yeah, so there's a little time.
schedule for 2 years out.
No, we don't.
But when we get it, then
But
we
he
can
has it, but he
establish it.
has it for 15, 16, and so he knows, and so what John is saying is we could tentative and then revisit it next fall
Yeah.
to just
Right.
confirm.
Yeah.
Or we could put it on the 3rd and be done.
I think the 3rd is fine.
Okay,
Go for it.
so we'll move the
Move
PD
the
date
3rd,
to the
okay.
3rd,
October 3rd?
October 3rd. Later than we'd like, but
Unless you want to have that on.
Better than,
But we would
I'd
like
rather have-
students on the
I mean,
3rd
it's still pretty
Friday.
early. It's-
Thumbs up on that one, Ann.
Ann, anything else that I should?
Well, I looked at that date too, and I kind of just, I didn't even think about third Friday, although I didn't notice it was the third week.
We're good on the second Friday. It's in January now that,
Oh, yeah.
so.
Then,
So if you'd like to approve, a motion to approve both calendars as given with record keeping being a student day, record keeping moving to the 5th, and the PD day in September on the 16th, moving to the 3rd of October during the 16-17 calendar, to approve those, and then that I can go back and check into this waiver business.
I will do that then. I will make a motion.
So moved.
I will make a motion to approve the 2015-2016 school calendar and the 2017 calendar with the changes of the PD to October 3rd and record keeping being students day on the 2nd of June, and then record keeping for teachers moving to the 5th of June.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to approve the 2015-16 calendar as printed and the 2016-17 calendar as printed with the following additions. The our professional development day of September 16th moves to October 3rd, and the record keeping day of June 2nd moves to the 5th, and student contact will be done on the 2nd.
And the question marks removed from the autumn break and the Good Fridays.
Yes.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Calendars are approved. Thank you. Last, we have action to approve the appointment of parent representation to the Council for Instructional Improvement. And that's
This fall, we put out an announcement through the newspaper, through the district website, as well as through school newsletters, and at orientation sessions that parents attended, that we really wanted to get some more parents involved in the CII committee. We had 8 people express an interest. I asked those 8 people to turn in an application. Of those 8, 3 did actually turn in the application. And we've reviewed those. Colleen and I have looked at them, Ann and I have looked at them, as well as a number of the central office administrators. And we'd like to make a recommendation tonight that Patty Urban and Megan Follett become parent representatives serving a 3-year term on the Council for Instructional Improvement.
Which Follett?
Megan.
Megan?
Megan Follett?
Okay. I would so move Patty Urban and Megan Follett be appointed to CII committee.
I would say
Second.
that.
okay. We have a motion, a second, to approve the appointments of Peggy Irwin and Megan Follett to 3-year terms to serve on the Council for Instructional Improvement.
I'm sorry, it's Patty Urban.
Patty, I'm sorry. Thank you. And express our thanks for their interest and support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And if you will review your calendars, we now have 2 special closed session board meetings on October 22nd. They will be at 6 and 7 p.m. We also have a special Board of Education open session meeting on October 27th. And then we're into November. So with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
No.